Hello, I'm Chris Athanas. I'm a KMP developer. Tech support that says they're coming out Tuesday to close that thing up, but we'll see, right? Today I'm going to be reacting to some more adventure-driven development inspired developers. And today we're going to do looking at some footage from Steve Wozniak. That's pretty rare. I've never seen this before. Only 10,000 people have seen it. But he's talking about where Pong came from. And Pong was like this one of his early video games that came out. It was in the arcades first. And I think Atari did it as well, but I'm not sure if they used his design or whether that came later. It's not clear, but a lot of people quote this part of Apple, Steve Wozniak, and Steve Jobs' history as like Steve Jobs got one over on Wozniak, and I hope this video will show that that's actually not true. Even if Jobs was paid more than $700 to do this design, if he hadn't done this, if he didn't do this together, he probably wouldn't have done the Apple one. And if he didn't do the Apple one, he probably wouldn't have done the Apple II. If he didn't do Apple II, there probably would have been no Macintosh. So the fact that Jobs may have bamboozled Woz a little bit here, I don't think Woz minded that much. I think he's pretty cool with it.
Steve went off to college, Reed College in Portland, Oregon. He was much more of a free spirit regarding schooling than I was. He went and signed up for some standard first-year courses, but he only attended other courses that he wasn't signed up for that he wanted to.
Right, and that's okay. Key insight. He's going. Jobs is on his own mission from day one. Like he should be doing tutorials, but he's only doing personal projects, and going up against whatever it is that he wants to do. So whatever catches his attention, he's not looking for grades. He doesn't care about it. He doesn't care about any of that stuff. He never did. He's like, he has this other thing in mind, right? That he picked up from hanging out with these guys and having a different view of things, a different outlook.
So he never did the normal schooling in addition to what he felt was worthwhile, like Shakespeare courses and whatnot. So he didn't go very far in school, like maybe a day or two. I went to, after the year at University of California at Berkeley, that was my third year of college, good grades, computer science curriculum. I wound up taking a couple of jobs to earn some money for my fourth year of school, and things go on and start progressing in your career, and it can be very difficult to get back for a long time. I wound up at Hewlett-Packard, working as an engineer, helping design calculator circuits for their scientific calculators.
Right, so he got roped in. He got roped into a silver horde. He got roped into a dungeon grind silver horde. It was probably because HP at the time was actually probably a nice place to work, and Woz is really more of the preserver type. He could be coaxed into doing something different by the destroyer creator type. He could be coaxed, and he's a refiner, right? Give him something to focus in and refine on. He's on the spectrum, so he's gonna get in. He's gonna get in there and do the preserver stuff, but don't. He puts up with way more stuff than most preservers would put up with because he's under the influence of a creator destroyer. When you have someone around that has that attitude and they're just not willing to give up, and they've had it for a long time, they've had all these wonderful experiences from doing that. Just know that's just going to be the way they are, and there's not going to be any change of that, right? It's the preserver types will come along, especially if you can show them that things that can be destroyed, right? We can get rid of stuff and still make stuff. So so Jobs was always hunting for the dragon. He was always going after the dragon. Now Woz, he was okay with doing lead mines and dungeon grinds and silver horde stuff. So he was at a silver horde dungeon grind at HP, working on old technology that his stuff, this scientific calculator. This digital circuit stuff was way below him. He'd already been doing this stuff like when he was a kid, like 5 years, 6 years, 7 years before he even got to college. His first science fair kit was totally transistorized that he built from the bottom up, basically one of these calculators. So calculators for him were something that he was very comfortable, good living, easy money. Money's good. He has time to go goof off with other things, look into other stuff, which is why he got into the computer stuff, because he was dreaming of these other things that he didn't have access to. All he had was his TTL circuitry that he'd been doing for a while.
1 year before, they had introduced the HB35 calculator, and it was taking the world by storm. It was causing dramatic social revolutions. It was very clear that slide rules would be obsolete within a few years.
Social revolutions in his group of friends, right? Which is all these people into electronics and computers and stuff like that. It was not computers at the time. It was all just electronics. It was super, very esoteric. You really had to be living in Silicon Valley at the time to be that young and being into and deep, as deep as he went, because he was just surrounded around it by it. And he's also a genius, right? So that's the other thing too.
I was so intrigued by this being the most incredible product I'd ever seen in my life, and I was so delighted to be able to get a job to work there.
Right. So he was working on something he really loved already. So he's kind of in the more adventure driven. I'm sure he had lots of offers, but the fact that he was working on these calculators and he thought was really changing things, he saw all his friends freaking out about it. It's like, all because the slide rule was so archaic, done, like should have been done a while before, and they're just using these digits. All I have to do is punch the numbers in and it does everything. What? I don't have to do all the slide rule back and forth every 5 seconds. Yeah. So it says so that was obvious he was in there, but he was like he's just really, he was just right on the, he likes it on this, right on this the touch edge. He's like, but you got a taste of like, oh, there is this other stuff that I can apply. My direct things I've been working on, I go to the next level, right?
So I worked on doing logic design on some of the circuits. In the meantime, I got a little bit out of my computer background. I didn't follow the mini computers and where they were going. They were just getting a little too big to be interesting anymore. It was not, the new machines where you can think about where 4K of RAM will go and how a basic compiler can actually work in 4K. Well,
right. So the computer industry for him that he had seen was it had already, like, even when he was a kid, it was already getting past where one person could do it. And he knew in the back of his mind, it's like, a calculator and a computer, they're not that different.
So I started my electronics interest, my electronics hobby turned towards other pursuits. In a bowling alley, saw the first version of Pong, and I was a little taken by it. It's very grabbing, and it shook you the first time you ever saw it. My God, I've never seen anything like this before. I sat there and I said something else. I said, I took electronics in high school. I know how TV signals work, and I know how to design computer circuits. I'm going to build a Pong. So that was my goal, to build a very simple, with very few circuits, Pong game. And the only 2 circuits that were probably optional that I put in were ones that, if you said, they were a couple of proms. The biggest prom you could possibly think.
Programmable read-only memory is just a way of doing, you can like put code in there, I guess. That's kind of how you can see it.
Getting or affording in those days was 256 by 4. That's only half of 256 bytes on one prom. Very difficult to get. EROMs were not affordable by individuals. So I got 2 of these proms because we used them in our calculator lab. And when you missed the ball, and the only reason I learned how to program the proms was when you missed the ball, it would say, oh darn, or something a little stronger. It was a very useful experience leading into building a computer, an individual computer that had a prom built in.
Right, so he was getting these early experiences by just playing around with stuff, seeing what he could come up with. Completely self-driven, right? A lot of this stuff self-driven.
One day, Steve Jobs he would get jobs at Atari on and off, and work as somewhere between technician and engineer, trying to get.
Right, yeah, at that time, there was people who were doing games and stuff. I was like, why are you doing that when the government's paying these $1 million contracts? You could be set for life. You could have your 401k stuff. But some of these people were just like, we're not interested in that. We want to do some games. We want to see what's going on there. So that was so there's people that could be doing something else, right? They're genius level enough to be doing something else, but they get captured by another way of looking at things. And that's what, like, I was involved with a games company that turned into production software, is also at an art software company. And that's where I got, this is where the adventure-driven development all stuff comes from, right? It's from my experiences working at those companies, and then coming back and seeing all this agile stuff coming. I'm like, what is this agile stuff?
Products into development, hustling things around, and he became very enamored by the Atari culture of the early days, and especially the founder Nolan Bushnell, whom he was very close to, and he just knew all the top people, and he's just a very persuasive, high-energy person who gets into the deepest levels of everything. He came to me one day and said, Nolan Bushnell has this game that he wants done called Breakout, or they were thinking at first of calling it Brickout, a bunch of bricks and a little ball that bounces around. And Steve said, look, I've seen you design stuff, and you're far ahead of me, so I said, could you design this thing? And I said, well, yeah, boy, I'd just love to, just to show that I can design it. No motivation other than that.
So Pong, so Breakout, I didn't realize he was the one that did Breakout first, but so Breakout was like the next generation of Pong. And so instead of playing against another player, you played against a wall of little bricks. I'm sure you've seen it. But so that was like, so different. But everybody thought it was different because instead of going side to side, it went up and down. Yeah,
Steve said, well, he'll pay us $700 if we give them a working breadboard. And if it's under 40 chips, they'll give us $1,000. And, you know, and it could have been 20 cents. I could care less. The challenge.
See, there it is. It could have been 20 cents. I could care less. It was the challenge. So Jobs, with his persuasiveness, and which is why I put that thing about the debate course. If you don't know how to argue your points and to counterpoints and not get upset, and understand people are trying to get their problem solved, right? If you can debate on a evil keel and not take it personally, you can find out things. And so Jobs knew Woz. They knew each other for a long time, right? He's like, "Can you do it?" He's like, "Okay, yeah." He's like, Woz, like, this is Woz's ballpark because he already been thinking about this stuff for a while. So it was like, he came along, and I was like, "Yeah," it was like $700 is even not even part of the thing for him. He just said it was. It was like, "Yeah, I don't really care."
40 chips, they'll give us $1,000. And, you know, and it could have been 20 cents. I could care less. The challenge was more the intrigue. But Steve said there's one problem. He said he had to go to Oregon in 4 days to work on some friend's farm. I think he probably had to buy into it or something.
Right, so it was a cult he had to go to. Was on an apple farm, and that's where he like did the whole thing about there's you eat apples, only eat apples, you get to higher states of consciousness, and he probably had to buy in. So yes, he probably had to pay more. So that's I think where that Steve Jobs might have like seen like, oh no, we're splitting the 700, which is like the profit that we'll get. I've got $3,000 for time to get on this farm to go meditate for a few months, like and get closer to what we're here. What are we here for?
And he needed money in 4 days, so we had.
That's still perfect. So that's just the thing too. A lot of these things have time limits on them, right? And that's the thing that is frustrating when we get involved with this stuff. There's time, but it's not all the time. It shouldn't be all the time. You're trying to race through the whole thing, but there are moments and periods where it's time to just do the thing, and times to not. Now, how they approached it is very, it's a young person way to doing things, and I definitely have done this. And if you haven't ever, okay, I'm sorry you didn't get to experience it, but sometimes you have to push hard to get things out. And the ones that do it, some of those win, and the ones that don't, you just never heard of again. You'll never know their names.
4 days to sit down from scratch, design a game in very few chips, because that's what we were being paid for, that somebody else had defined exactly where the score was on the screen. In other words, you couldn't save one chip to move the score. You had to put it where it was intended to be. Very difficult task for 4 days. Well, got right on it. We both stayed up all night long, 4 nights in a row. Catch a couple of winks of sleep in the morning. That was about it. We both got mononucleosis from it. We were really stressing ourselves, but we actually did design it.
Well, you did. He helped. He was there to do emotional support. So that he pushed the thing because he wanted to get up to wherever he was going to go to the apple farm and do his meditation and get that thing and just get the thing through. That's what it takes, though.
Atari had to, I think, redesign it somewhat. They said their engineers saw it and they couldn't figure out the design. So I know that it was mine.
That's so cool. All right, so let's listen to some things about the types of people and the types of personalities that are involved with these things and how our culture really doesn't support it. And I don't think you ever could actually get a culture to support these things. But it's interesting to hear about these guys, how they talk about it with Samo Burja, with this, he's pretty famous. He's about 5 years old. But the thing is, the things he's talking about still are eternal topics. And it says, how can Western society continue to form collective intelligence and update its young with relevant skills and knowledge? You know what? It's this stuff. It's the fool card. It's the people who they just don't fit in quite, and they don't get kicked out, right? They don't fit in and they don't get kicked out. And there's a 20% that's gonna get these people here. There's the destroyer creators, right? They're tolerated, but they're never gonna be in the preserver, because the preserver, look, man. To get the preserver to hold on to it and think it's the one true thing, it has to be pretty good, right? It has to stay that way. And for you to come along and expect something else to come in, it has to be radically different, right? It has to be something really good. And the only person that's on that journey is the people who are willing to go off the leap off the thing and go off in a different direction. So let's listen to what they have to say.
I think.
Yeah, question. Well, for those that are just listening on our audio platforms, we have a question from Ant K. Cook, who says, how can Western society continue to form collective intelligence and update its young with relevant skills How do we all agree on how to take the steps to actually get there?
I have a question from the audience.
Yes, let's have the audience question.
All right, let's bring it up on the TV.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, there we are.
Yeah, question. For those that are just Western society continue to form collective intelligence and update its young with relevant skills and knowledge. And I believe this is Anthony. Anthony reached out to us from the United Kingdom. He's a graduate student in physics, I believe, and he's just been in touch with our channel as well. It's good to hear from you.
Thanks for watching, Anthony.
Yes.
Now, I'm really quite annoyed with the editing in this video, but the content's good.
Participating.
Right.
It's important.
I mean, it's a really tough question. The best answer I would have is that we should be moving towards a world where we allow high agency individuals to express that agency as much as possible.
Okay, so that's the thing. He's talking about the high agency people. He's talking about people that want to go on this visionary quest. But the thing is, you're never. I don't know how you would ever get a Ken Thompson, because he's already in that mix of things. He's like, there was a bunch of Ken Thompsons around that would have loved to have a key to that room to go in and mess with that machine all right. But the system was not designed, nor could tolerate it could not allow for rules for like that kind of person to have access. It just wasn't allowed. The same thing today. There's all kinds of gatekeepers all around, and it's honestly the clever ones who can figure out a way to see the cave entrance. The ones that are going to climb up that mountain, no matter if you were there paying them or not, right? It's that group that I don't know how you can allow those high agency people. How do you filter them out? Yeah, this is the filter. This mountain is attacking the monster. They're going after your dream, going after some epic quest. Steve Jobs called it insanely great. Some bigger vision than just what's here. And how do you get access to that? Well. And how do you support that? Because if you let a lot of insane people around running amok, it's just insanity, right? It just can't be done, right? We do have to have. There's a lots of these people around, but not all of them have good. Not all the ideas are good. Let's just put it that way. Just because you're high achieving, whatever, you go on the edge, it doesn't mean you're gonna have necessarily good ideas. It has to go through that filter, right?
And that can't be done in a standardized bureaucratic context. It has to be done via leaving spaces open. I think.
Really? How do you do that?
Without the ability to act, a lot of learning never happens, because there's a unity between theory and action. This unity has been degrading in very serious ways for a very long time. I would argue at least 100 years, because it's much easier to organize a formal education process where everyone is given theory than to organize social structures such that there is room for the multiplicity of action and agenda. We discussed earlier the problem with China. Well, China's in many ways different, but it's not that different. They're just a little bit more on the spectrum towards order and stability, and they're more towards the spectrum of, well, perhaps this is a challenge to central authority. The United States has some elements as well. I think that on a good enough setup, stability, order are not in contradiction with creativity and growth. What is more
They kind of are. They kind of are. They are in conflict with each other. As well they should be. As well they should be. So this is where I'm kind of disagreeing a little bit here. I kind of think it has to always be like this. And we have to have some people in awareness, like, okay, the preservers have to be somewhat aware, like, every once in a while, a destroyer comes along that creates something new that really helps and it makes the preserver's life easier, better, faster, more interesting, fun, whatever. But it has to be good. It has to be something really amazingly good. Like, this is what the role is. Most people are here to preserve it the way things are.
unstable and fragile than a stagnant, non-adaptive system? That will be a short-lived system. Such a system can only last 50 years or 100 years. It can never last 400 years or even 1,000 years. A system that can last 1,000 years is a self-transforming and evolving system. To make it more concrete, I think we should probably abolish elite education, by which I mean not abolish education, but abolish the credentialing chokehold held by the Ivy League universities. They put a stamp on your forehead that says you are given economic opportunities or you're not given economic opportunities.
Yeah, it's the preservers, right? That's in the preserver filter. Where all these institutions, once they get big enough, they have to be staffed by preservers because the destroyer types will just wreck them. So it's just, you can't. It's just the nature of how things are. And if you know, then you know what you're up against, right? But if you think it's going, it'll just make the preservers more accepting of destroyers and creators. No, I don't think that's really a thing, man.
I don't know. Perhaps we should do something radical. Perhaps we should enroll 500,000 students a year in Harvard. If Harvard is so good for you and is teaching you so many wonderful things, why shouldn't we democratize Harvard?
Why?
All right, so that's that correlation, causation. People think that Harvard is the cause of what comes out of what's, sometimes you get some good stuff. Most of the time, a lot of people cheat and lying. And they didn't know that there was a lot of cheating and lying going on at this time that we now know about in the future. So that's not necessarily an indicator. So correlation causation there gets a little screwed up, right? It's got brand recognition, and that's about it. But like, what is preserver brand recognition, right? It's like, oh, this is what did actually produce some of that stuff at some point in the past, but things have changed and things move on, and it goes someplace else.
The economic
and so that's what his point is like. Oh, if Harvard is the cause, well, just put a bunch of people through Harvard, right? Just replicate the things. Like, no, there's a filtering system, and the people that can go through that filter, some of them are very capable. Some of them are very preservers. They understand all the rules. Some of them will know all the rules and break them, right? It's a very small number of people. Most people are just like, oh, tell me the rule, and I'll just go do it. And they'll plug you into the system, right? But there's people that go through it and then know the rules and then break them, right? And they go do something else. And those are the ones like, oh, wow, that's amazing. That must be Harvard. It's like, no, it's in spite of Harvard.
So why the constraint on the supply?
Correct. Why are you constraining supply? Well, a cynical argument might be that Harvard is a hedge fund attached to a school for tax purposes, right? And then you might say, well, perhaps their calculus is guided primarily by how to get students that will maximally, that will give the biggest possible donations back to you.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And how to maximize the value of the small economic network.
Right. So you take people that can run through that filter, who are preserver types, who they can be trusted, right? And then they'll plug them into a system, then preserve it, right? And it's just like, sounds good, and it works good for a while, right? But then it doesn't. And then the destroyer comes along and just eats the lunch. And we're going through one of those transitions right now, one of those phase transitions right now. That's why I'm a KMP developer, one language, one set of libraries, one UI toolkit, and you can deploy to Android, web, desktop, backend, all one company, one IDE, one language. It standardizes this whole layer. They used to take 5 to 10 people per thing you're trying to do. Now it's just one to do most of it. So that's different.
Still, though,
because so much of the online open educational platforms now enable some of the
enable scaling, radical scaling. Yeah. And so.
Right. So if it is the Harvard, if it is that, if it's just their systems that we need to plug in, we can and it's not. We discovered that that's not that. It's something else. It's this stuff. It's allowing people like this not to be kicked out of open systems. But that's what they do. They kick you out. If you don't adapt, if you go into an Amazon and you're a destroyer creator and you think you can improve the processes, oh, the preservers are going to eat your lunch. They're going to eat your lunch, and it's like, oh, you don't want it. You're going to pit plan, buddy. You said it was going to be 3 points, and now we're saying it's 5 because points are time are points. Come on.
Reform tertiary education. So these top universities probably need to be opened up. I think it's possible for us to scale like the delivery of theory there, and we should deconstrain the credentialing system so that a simple piece of paper is not the key thing that enables or not economic opportunity.
Right. So I can't tell if he's trolling here a little bit because just open it up. If it's so great, just scale it up, right? That's not it.
You can imagine even more fundamental transformations. Imagine a world where you're not supposed to discriminate against someone on the basis of a college degree. You are
Right. This is pie this guy. So this is actually the way it works anyway. So the stuff he's talking about, this adventure-driven stuff, the things that people like Woz, people like Jobs are like going down a new path, a new territory. And it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be electronics. It could be some area of business, some area like where you're trying to go do something new that hasn't been seen before. So that there is no credentialing there that says if you're going to succeed or not. The credentialer shows someone who is looking for a preserver type that's going to run a business or just take orders and do it better than not. They're going to look for this. So that's what that degree supposedly means. I don't know if it even means that anymore. But that's the idea behind it, right? It's like, okay, you have the minimum standard. And they don't really filter for this outstanding people that want to destroy the current system and create something new. There's really not a filter because they don't even know how to. It's just so random. It's just so random when stuff works and when it doesn't, right? So they don't know.
allowed to evaluate them for the concrete skills they have or don't, but you're not allowed to ask what school they went to. Wouldn't that be a different world? Maybe that would be a better world, right? So that would be step one. Step two is probably, again, being more friendly rather than afraid of human agency. Mm-hmm. And number three would be viewing knowledge as positive, right? When I said earlier it's not useful to be afraid of the future, it's best to study the future. I think we've inadvertently become afraid of knowledge. We now believe
Yeah, I've been afraid of knowledge, exactly. All right, I got my power back. Let's continue on this.
Believe that there was forbidden knowledge, and we tasted of the fruit maybe back in 1945 with the first atomic bomb, maybe earlier. We've eaten the fruit, we're chewing it, we're processing it. Let's not have it be poisonous for us, and let's not be afraid of eating more fruit.
Yep.
Right. I think he's just trying to say here, like, look, there's the things that we've already have, and there's all kinds of activities going on there. But he's saying, like, is there a way we can integrate the food more in a society that's dominated by preservatives? I just don't know. I just don't think it's possible. But this is for me and you, though. For someone that's getting this far along in this playlist, we're the kinds of that we'll take it. We'll take the risk if we see it. If we think it's worth it. If we think it's worth doing and going after, even if we fail, just to know that we tried, just to know we don't look back with regret. We have the courage and creativity, and it's like, oh, if worst comes to worst, you just have a company. If worst comes to worst, I know I tried. If worst comes to worst, I did what I could do and didn't bitch out and give up on my dreams. Like if you're in a meets expectations mode, I understand, man. There's other things going on in people's lives, but if you're in like in a mode where like, okay, I can't, whatever the thing is you're interested in applying your will and intention to, if you just like, this is unacceptable, and not just bitching about it, right? But you also have a way to fix it, right? That's the other thing too. That's the engineering part. It's like, not only do you see the issue and can argue what the problems are, you also have something that actually may be able to fix it. Some way, make it easier, make it faster, make it better, make it smaller, make it more fun. And that's really the engineering part. So that's why there is this gating factor here, where you have to go through the tutorials. You have to become aware of your personal projects. Like that's what Woz did. But did some personal projects. He did Pong. He did the tutorials. He went through the classes and looked at all the manuals and stuff. And then he did some personal projects. And then a junior role was that breakout thing, which he had already been messing with. And then his Apple one was a senior lead role. But he was still coming up this mountain this way. He was still coming up the mountain. This was his going up the mountain, right? He got lost in here a little bit. Whatever, who cares? Like, he was going after it, right? And he inspired lots of people to do it. So let's listen to some more about, let's do this one first.
Steve came along one day and he said, look, all these people are interested in schematics, but it takes them 10 hours if they know what they're doing to put one together. And God knows if they can figure it out and test it. He said, why don't we make a PC board? And it'll have a silkscreen legend on it telling them where every chip goes. And we'll just sell it for $40 at the club and people will buy the PC board.
Right, so that's your small market that you've identified, where you can do what you can do right now to improve their process of whatever they're going through, whoever the people you are. What can you do to make it a little better? Is there anything here? Can I get involved? A lot of this stuff is like, how can I get involved? What can I do to make it easier, faster, smaller, cheaper, more fun?
They know where to get all the parts at the local surplus stores, and they'll plug the parts in, solder it together, and it will only take them a couple hours to make. And, we sat down and thought about how many people did I think in the club were really going to buy this $40 PC board that cost us $20 to make, and we would get our money back, and we'd have to pay a guy to make the PC boards. We figured out that it might take about 50 people buying them to break even. I didn't think we'd do it. Steve said, yeah, we'll lose our money, but at least we'll have a company. And I'll tell you, that makes a lot. That's a good enough reason to do it. If you tried to justify it in dollar terms, it did not go. But in terms of just feeling, once in your life you had a little on-the-side company, that's sort of a neat thing that everybody really wants a part of. So we did it.
Not everybody wants a part of it. Woz did. He's like, this is the prize. Having a company, everything's got a company. Hey, at least we got a company out of it. We're doing something, trying something different, and it's ours, right? It's ours, right? So whether it wins or fails, it's up to us. It's up to and that's for the preserver types, it's very scary. But for creator destroyers, it's like, holy shit, I can actually do that. Yes, you can. And a lot of times, the preserver types who are just on the edge here, they need a destroyer creator over here to like pull them along. Hey, I know you kind of want this. I know you're scared. I know it's scary. It is scary. It takes courage, right? It's scary to go down that road. And but a Woz type's like, he wouldn't have done it on his own. He wouldn't have gone down there. He wouldn't have got the gig. He wouldn't have gone down to Atari to work in part-time. So it's a meaning of two things: technical expertise and a vision of some epic quest, something bigger than what we have. So the next horizon, the next heap, and then it keeps going from there, right? Let's keep going.
Originally, there were three of us. One guy helped out doing our first manual, and he had 10% of the company. Because Steve and I each had 45%. And then if there were any disputes between Steve and I, we both trusted Ron Wayne to resolve them. And he decided that once Steve started getting orders for large amounts once we started selling completely, we were going to sell blank PC boards at first for $40. Once we got orders and we're selling $500 completely built computers, he got worried because Steve was committing ourselves to all these huge orders of parts for thousands of dollars, and Steve and I didn't have anything. You know, I mean, we barely had, minimum down payment on a car, for me, one of us. And he had money. So he knew that he was the only one that in the end, in this partnership, was going to get nailed. So he sold out his 10% for $800.
And this happens all the time. It's not that we laugh now because we know in hindsight what Apple had become even by 1984. Where is it? When is this? What is this? When was this played? October 4th, 1984. So like almost 40 years ago. We all see in hindsight, even then at that time was like, oh wow, everything, the Apple II was amazing. It's like super cool, whatever. And yeah, but after that it went down and then went up and then went down and then went up. There was no set like, oh, Apple's going to be a number one. It's like there was nothing saying that was going to be the way it was. But because that, I don't even know if Apple will continue in the future. But the spirit that brought it into life is this willing to take on risk.
Well, I was at work one day, and we were planning to, barely make back our $1,000 by the time we made 100 PC boards. And we had made the first 3 boards, and I was showing them off at work to the other engineers and glowing over it. It was the most beautiful artistic PC board I'd ever seen in the world. I look at it now, and it was really pretty cruddy. But Steve called me on the phone.
It was ingenious.
And said, guess what? I said, what? He said, I got an order for $50,000. Okay, and of course I was floored. He hit me with the big one. And I said, what? He said, the local computer store, there was only one in our area, they'd been buying these computer kits, assembling them in the back room like their own technicians and selling them at a higher price. And basically they wanted a computer completely assembled. Well, so basically our computer was all on one PC board. Just had to stuff all the parts in and put it over a wave soldering machine, and it was completely done. And the user only had to connect 3 things.
So he's went through what is the minimum thing I need to do next? He's like, he doesn't know how this stuff works. He's even working at HP. He doesn't know how this stuff's put together. But he's finding it along as he goes. He is going along the trail here. And he didn't know. I mean, even if he was in the business, he doesn't know all this stuff, how it's supposed to put together, how to cost or anything. He didn't know. He's just going along, right? He is doing the fool's like journey. He's like, just hopefully I'm just kind of being educated with my guesses. I'm not just going off half-cocked. But I'm not exactly sure where the next place the step is going to be. I'm not sure.
Board, monitor, and some transformers for power. It turns out we found out that it only cost $13 to pay a company to stuff all the parts in and wave solder it. It only cost.
You didn't know that ahead of time. You found that after the fact. That's the people think of it as like, what? How could you even think? This is how it's done. We're using this as an example of adventure driven, but this is how it's done. You don't know exactly where the next thing's going to come together, but your reticular, what was it called? Reticle activation system, where you say, oh, I need to figure this out. And your subconscious goes to work. And that subconscious mind, I don't know if it's hooked into the universe or whatever, but if it's possible to pull out, it'll pull it out for you. If it's in the plan, if it can actually happen, and if it's likely to happen, so you get lucky, you roll the dice. It's adventure, man. It's adventure. And if you let that something stop you, that's it. The adventure's over. But if you're like, is there a way? I'm not sure. It might take a day, might take a month, might take who knows how long it takes, right? But if you keep scanning the environment, the stuff like this happens. I've seen it in my experience over and over, just over and over. Like people show up, events happen. It's bizarre.
$13. We're wondering, why are all these kits being sold? Why would you not pay the $13 and make sure everybody gets a completely assembled computer?
Because this is what he just found out. Technical debt. So technical debt is when you find out, the moment you find out there's a better way, like you had doing it one way, which is the Heathkit way, like everybody solder every little damn thing, right? Oh, that's the big thing is the soldering. No. Holy shit. Now you do have to know how to solder if you're going to make these things. But knowing how to solder is not the thing. Holy crap, no. And they would just made a huge be like, you gotta solder. Everybody solders. Like, goddamn. Anyway, so he had the you have to solder vibe. Then he became aware of wave solder, where everything gets soldered at once by a machine, perfect every single time. No human touches it. And this is called, like, the technical debt just pounded. It's like, no, we have to do it this way. I am so sick to death. He's like, I'm sick to death of soldering these damn things. One at a time, each on a hole, like a human. Like, no. Automate that stuff.
The people that were starting this little business had no idea. They came out of the hobbyist world of heat kits, and they thought that somehow that was a big...
Heat kit was a brand back in the early days, a radio kits where they would send you all the parts and the board and the instructions, and you just do it like a paint by numbers. You don't really have to know anything about how this stuff works at all. But they say, oh, but by soldering it, you'll know. It's like, no. That is actually not how you know. That's how you can sell kits to people who don't know any better. It's like, all I got to do is solder. All I got to do is leak code, and I know how to do everything. It's like, no. That's not how you learn how to do it. But anyway, so it was very popular because they could sell the things, and some people did, like, got more out of it than other people. But most people are like, okay, I'm soldering these things. It works, but I don't know much more about what's going on. It's impressive that I got this package of parts and thing to work. Yeah, that's pretty cool. But, like, do I know how it works? Fuck no.
Cost savings benefit. It was really a drawback. So we were going to sell the most assembled computer of its day. It didn't.
Right. And this was saying something back then. It was a 76, 75, 76. It was all these kits, and, like, I remember as a little kid looking at this stuff, and I had to assemble it, and I was okay at soldering, but I wasn't going to spend the equivalent of, like, a few $1,000s to, like, try and solder these things together. I'd already blown chips. It was super expensive. I couldn't afford it. But as soon as, like, a couple years went by, and then people were like, oh, you put a case on it, attach a keyboard and a monitor to it, and the people are okay with it then. I was like, okay, how much does it cost? $13 to assemble it? We could probably make money on that.
Did not have a case on it even. It was just a plain old PC board.
Right. So that was the first thing. It's like, no, this is unacceptable.
I mean, it came from, my thinking and the rest of the Homebrew Computer Club thinking was pretty much along the lines of, if you had a whole bunch of wires scrapped across your living room floor, running into your TV set, and clipping into your phone with alligator clips all over, and it was gonna burn down your house someday, that was fine, because
Right, for them it was fine. For the MVP prototype, yes, fine. That is fine for your first customer's proof of concept, got it out the door, but that's not going to scale, right? So we have to then refine that. So for your initial customers, like, holy shit, we can just do this now. But for the next step up, you got to make it a little pretty. You got to put a case on it. That's aesthetics, that's art, that's taste, that's practicalities. It's all measured, it's balancing all these things together. Costs and functionality, like licensing, all this crazy shit.
It was usable. That was a
You have to do when you're going up the mountain yourself. You have to deal with all this other stuff. You're not just dealing with the TTL logic, right? Like he's not doing calculators anymore. He's not just doing schematics with TTL logic that he's done 1,000 times. He can do tomorrow in his sleep, basically. No, he's dancing with this thing now. Oh, is this where the prize lies behind this thing? We'll have to learn about waveboard soldering and cost of goods and customer needs about not wanting to do soldering, and I don't have to do soldering, and I just pay the money and you can just give me the board without the soldering. Holy shit!
Computer, and you could really use it. And it didn't matter at all that it had to be, have some sort of looks or some sort of product value. And that was where I came from. And Steve came more from a thinking of trying to get to a product that could be sold en masse.
Right. So he got the guts. So Woz has the guts and kind of the hobbyist mindset and the explorer mindset of like, what can we do with this thing? How can we get this out to people? And Steve Jobs is like, you have to do more than that. There's another thing that for humans to feel comfortable, they have to have this other thing around it. Now inside has to be solid, but the outside has to be solid too, right? How people learn about your business, how people learn about when your website, the first things they see, all that stuff is super important, right? Because it's what you are. It's what your customer. So when people saw the Apple One and had the case and the keyboard and the monitor, they're like, "Oh shit!" And if they just saw the motherboard by itself, like it's just I've seen that 1,000 times. I don't even know what that is. But you put a keyboard and a screen, it's like, oh, a TV and a keyboard. Wait, I have a typewriter and a keyboard. And it's like when you type on the thing, it types on the screen. What?
and be a part of a big market that was about to happen as a real product that you can deliver and other people can use besides just we few freaks who couldn't afford it.
Yeah, but that's where you start, right? You can't start with, I'm going to do the huge market first. No, you start with the freaks. You start with the freaks, man. You got to start with a tiny little group of people who are just like those true believers of the thing, or whatever you're going after, that really need your thing.
Okay. Anyway, we had to build our first Apple I's once we got this large order. And we had to buy a lot of parts. And Steve was very persuasive and talked the local parts suppliers.
I see, there's the key right there. He's a persuasive guy. So a lot of dealing with the dragon is persuasion. Sometimes you have to attack it. Sometimes you got to persuade it. A lot of it's persuasion. How do you not get angry when people are telling you what your needs are? They're not telling you how your stuff sucks. That might be part of it. But what they're really trying to communicate is what the problem is that they're trying to solve, that's causing them pain. So if you take it as like they think it's you causing pain, it's like, no, you're like one of the people that can solve it, so they're gonna complain to you. If you're showing up and like half solving it, oh yeah, you're gonna get a lot of complaints.
And giving us credit based
because you're the ones that can fix it. They're not gonna fix it. They don't even know how to fix it. That's up to you. That's where you come in.
He had a purchase order that was signed by the local store. So he said, if we pick up the parts, we'll build the computers, we'll sell them to the local store, and they called the owner to make sure, and we'll give you the money, and we'll get it to you real quick. So what we did was, we arranged everything. As soon as the PC boards came off of the assembly line, at the same company, well, the parts would go over, and they would start stuffing the parts in, and then they would wave solder it right there, because they did it right there, and then we'd pick them up a couple days later, take them to the garage, plug in the last integrated circuits, and Steve and I would race, and I usually won. I always
make it fun to get it done.
And then, I don't know how you remember these things. But anyway, we would test them out.
This is important. That stuff's important. Every company I've worked at has had that kind of mentality. Not to like, it's like coming down from management. We just did it with ourselves. We just did it amongst ourselves. Because we were already motivated. We're already kind of going in the dark direction anyway. And that's the kind of things that happen. It can't be chopped down. It has to be volunteered into because you're asking someone to do crazy shit. Like stay up all night every 3 days and start these ridiculous boards just to can we get somebody else that's like, no, your quality control, it really matters that the things are done right, and you just can't pay someone $3 an hour. You got to make sure, because this is what starts it up, man. This is how it works. It can't be below you to sweep the floors and empty the trash.
And we box up the working ones and drive them down to the local store. And we discovered that from when we get the parts to when we get the computers delivered to the store and get our check was 10 days. And we had 30 days credit on the parts. We had 30 days to pay them off, and we ran.
So now he's learning about credit, terms of service, all supply chain operations, throughput, all this other stuff that has nothing to do with TTL calculators. And he's having a blast. He's dancing with this thing. Things may not happen. Things could go terribly wrong. Like somebody could totally screwed. Somebody gets sick. Who knows? But he's like going after it.
And the whole cycle in 10 days. It's amazing what you can do when you got one level of management.
Exactly. It's amazing what you can do when you have one level of management. It's amazing what you can do when you have one level of management. That's a Steve Wozniak. I'm gonna make sure this goes in the document somewhere. I'm gonna make sure this goes in the document. Look, yes, it's amazing what you can do when you have one layer of management. Let me put it right here. Editing, boop, douche. Oh, not that one. It's amazing. Okay, I'll put that in later. Let's keep going. Right. So here's the next one. Here's that scene, but it's all cinematic. Well, I want to discuss some things about this scene too, because it's probably really actually what happened, because it's so close to what his story was. Which I had seen this movie before, which is about jobs in 2013, but I didn't hear that about this. I didn't know about this. I didn't know about this stuff.
On one PC board.
I didn't know about that. So this is so obviously someone's doing their homework. There it is. I don't want to get the copyright notice. There it is, 76. And he's testing them out, testing each one, make sure it's freaking solid, man. before he keeps going to the next one. There it is. And there's a nice little box of paper. He's got a little manual. And they put some effort into it. But it's artistic. It's not like a damn... There's no other computer manual that had that artistic stuff on the front of it. No. It was typewritten, just regular type. It wasn't even laid out like this. It was just typewritten sheets. To someone, it was mistakes in them, errors all over the place from Heathkit or from wherever, from these other kit manufacturers. It was just like they're just phoning it because they're for hobbyists. It was for hobbyists. It wasn't meant for any consumer. So this is part of the journey up the mountain, right? This is part of, he's like in here. It's like, you're close, buddy, but you're about to get hassled.
Right.
As promised.
Nice board. Where's the rest?
Threat. This is all.
I asked for 50 computers. That's keyboards, cases, monitors, and power included, not just boards.
Just boards.
This is Woz right here. Just boards.
Excuse me, just boards. These are state of the art. The logic boards alone are. Nobody's making anything like this. They're what? How dare you?
So he thinks. So these are two preserver types. This is one preserver type who's on the edge here. This person has no idea what it is. He's a preserver type. He's like over right here. He's a store owner. He just wants to make money on the volume, right? He doesn't want to come out. He doesn't really know what these things. He doesn't know how to make any of this stuff. He just knows he likes it. He knows what the consumers like. He knows what the customers like, and he's going to tell you what's wrong with it too. So this is our customer. The preserver is our customer. So the destroyer creator comes in. So destroyer creator. He comes in and to have the proper instruction about how to destroy things properly, you do have to listen to the preserver. The preserver will tell you. Oh, you want to get poke the dragon, and you want to defeat this thing with reason and persuasion and satisfaction.
How dare
I
you?
think what my colleague is saying is that you're not seeing the possibilities here. That is indeed one unbelievably kick-ass computer.
Not to the consumer.
Well, then maybe your consumer should start to learn how to operate, how to even work that.
Listen,
don't you think?
boys, you sold me on a home computer. That's a keyboard and monitor. This is a board. Now, I'm sure this makes a very capable starter kit, but the everyday person, the kind of person that's not an engineer or in a computer club like you, they're not going to know what the hell this is.
Right.
The average Joe doesn't want to build their own computer. They just want to buy it. They want to take it out of the box, plug it in, and have it work. Steve.
See, he basically just told him. He was just like, oh, so this Jagger was like, all you got to do is put a case on it and put a monitor and put a keyboard on it. Oh, I know where to get a monitor. I know where to get a keyboard. I know where to get a case. Steve's always like, oh, this is great. All you actually, so this his main customer, right, who he's listening to, he's not getting pissed off like Woz is. Woz doesn't understand what's happening right now. He's giving the instructions on how to achieve the grand prize, the golden chalice. He just got instructions. He just got schooled. Jobs is listening. Woz is hearing. Oh, it's room for improvement. It's crap or whatever. And all Jobs is like, oh, all I have to do is that. You're telling me exactly what I need to do to make it so this will sell like crazy, and you won't complain. So the more angry you get, the more truth comes out. Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Are you listening to me?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's listening.
These are your boards. And they will sell. I can promise you that. You saw our demo at Homebrew. You know what it's capable of with the right components, which, by the way, all of which, you sell. So
See, he thought it for the average person like Woz, if you went in there and doing that stuff, instead of listening to the customer, agreeing with them, cooperating, see where we can meet eye to eye, and see where I can make money. Oh, you're all right. This is a money deal. Right, I got all the stuff here. Right. Now, what he really wanted was, I don't want to deal with all this inventory. You put one thing together for me, and out it goes. Like you showed me at the homebrew club. We had it all set up there, not just a board. You had the monitor and the keyboard and everything. And it was in a case. It was a crappy little wooden case, but it was still in a case, right?
Demo it to the consumer and market the components separately.
Right.
You show them your keyboards and your monitors. You'll move more inventory that way, and you'll make a hell of a lot more cash.
Right. So that's where he came up here. He's like, oh, he just came up again. He just came up again. It's like, oh, now you're speaking the language of the customer. Speaking the language of the customer in the way the customer wants to hear. Now, he has a different vision. Like, he could give less of a shit. He's like, you don't understand. This board is the thing. The case and the monitors. We have TVs for years, man. Keyboards for years. We got cases for years. You don't see it yet, but I'll make you see it. All you do is dress it up in that stuff. Oh, buddy, you just open the door for me. What? And this is the kind of stuff that happens along the way when you're doing adventure-driven development. This stuff kind of your customers. If you get close, if you start hitting close, they're gonna complain. They're gonna get pissed. They're gonna be like, you gotta do it like this. You gotta do it like that. Now, some of those people you need to ignore, but some of the people, if you hear the same thing over and over again from different angles, basically talking about the same thing, oh, you better pay attention.
You got me.
All right, Steve. I'll try to sell them. But if I don't, I'm not making another order.
Exactly. Time limit. That's it. Here you go, man. You either step up or next. And there was a bunch of other people in line.
Okay, that's fine. But I think that you might be really interested in our second model.
What's the
There he goes. See, there it is. Now that's a move that Woz would not have made, right? No matter how much in a million years you coached him, he wouldn't have gone, the 2.0. You just gave me the 2.0, sir. You just gave me the 2.0. You just gave me the next version. You just told me everything I needed. I needed a keyboard. I needed a monitor. I needed a case and a power, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Oh, so when he goes, what do you mean the 2.0? It's like, yeah, you just told me. You just told me, and you'll find out, right? You'll find out.
What's the second model?
What are you talking about?
See? He's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean, what are you talking about? Were you not listening? Were you not listening when the guy told you exactly what we needed to do to give him, to make sure he's like pumping these things out more than we could ever imagine? No? See, this is the problem with the preservers. They're stuck in that little narrow little channel, and that's fine, right? We need these people. We need it. Without Woz, this thing would have never happened. But without jobs to say which way to go so we can sell these goddamn things, none of these people can be hanging around for much longer. Right. And here's John Scully. Now, John Scully came in as a preserver when Apple was having issues, and he butted heads. Now, it wasn't Scully and Jobs that butted heads. It's the people involved with the preserver's hierarchy, the people he is beholden to. So what Destroyer is beholden to is time, right? We only got so much time to do this thing that if it's going to glow off, I have a timetable, right? But for the preserver, it's keeping time still. This one knows time's moving forward because he's moving it forward, right? Time is moving forward because he's moving it forward. But the preserver wants to keep it still. The same thing yesterday, today, tomorrow. And that's why he's brought in, because he's a corporate expert. He's been like, oh, you know corporate stuff, you know preserver stuff. It's like, oh, we need preserver people, right? The board goes, no Destroyer. It's time to get some preserver people in here. And so it wasn't Scully. It was the people above him that he was beholden to at the point in time when this happened.
Why he was asked to step down. He was never fired, by the way. He was asked to step down running the Macintosh division. I was brought in at a time where the only cash flow for Apple for the next 3 years was the Apple II. The sales were going down. It was outsold 2-to-1 by its major competitors. So the focus I was given by the board was turn around the Apple II and keep the cash flowing for the next 3 years, because nobody expected Macintosh to make any money, until probably 1986. I joined in 1983. When Steve introduced the Macintosh office in 1985, it was a terrible failure. He went into a Great Depression. He got mad at me, and he said, "You forced me to price it too high. I want to lower the price." He said,
So Steve was starting to have issues. He was a little bit flaking out a little bit, kind of out of his element a little bit.
He said, "I want to shift the advertising from Apple II over to the Macintosh office." And I said, "Steve, if you do that, you're going to throw the company into losses, and we're a public company. We need to go to the board. And you can present your side, I'll present my side, but I think that's wrong." And so we went to the board. They asked the vice chairman, Mike Markula, to study it for about 10 days to talk to all of the executives. And he came back and reported to the board, not to me or to Steve, but to the board. And he said, I agree with John. I don't agree with Steve. So that was a specific decision, not to fire him, but to ask him to step down. I was still relatively new in Silicon Valley in those days. I came from corporate America. I didn't understand enough how important a visionary founder is to any of these companies, whether it's Google or Facebook or Apple or Amazon. And I think in hindsight, when you're doing innovative products the way Apple has always done, at that point, to lose the founder, particularly a visionary, brilliant, genius founder, was a mistake. So where was the responsibility? Well, I think part of the responsibility is with the board of directors, because they knew what they were hiring with me. They weren't hiring a computer expert. They knew that Steve was a mercurial personality, and they weren't prepared to put him in charge. But I think more could have been done to get us to work together.
Well, I don't know. You guys don't really get along. The destroyer creator types and the preserver types, there's always going to be friction there because we're at odds with each other, right? One wants to hold on and one wants to say we need to move forward, right? And this is just how the universe is set up. This is how things are put together. I didn't make the rules. But it's the contention of these forces that bring this stuff out. If the preservers get their way, it becomes frail, fragile, and brittle and falls apart. If the destroyer gets their way, it becomes spastic, just everything going 16 directions at once, falls apart. So to have the success is an interplay of all these things, and no one gets it right, right? It's just how it is. This is just how the world is made. Let's see. So 56 minutes. I am going to leave this one to later. Yeah, I'm going to leave this one to later. So, but that is about it for me. I hope it's becoming more clear as we go along. Like, what is the adventure-driven development spirit? How to think about these things in a way that you'll come up with new things for the people that for developers that want to go on this path, right? This is not for everybody. The preservers, they're just uninvited already. They didn't even watch this far. Anyway, my name's Chris, and I'll talk to you soon.